Good afternoon, everybody. I know it's really tough after lunch, particularly for those who haven't got lunch yet. But we're going to spend the next hour or so talking about how to optimize your Android app with Google Analytics. So here, the three of us are from the Google Analytics team. I'm Phil, this is Nick, and that is Jim. But really, Jim and Nick are the experts in the room. So as a show of hand, how many of you are not Google Analytics users? Oh, great. See why I asked the opposite way? It would be a very different story. So for those who don't know Google Analytics, that's a screenshot from the current version of Google Analytics. It is essentially a tool that helps you as a marketer, developer, website owner to understand who are coming to your website, what they are doing, and how you can optimize your various marketing activities. So in the last month or so, we have released a slightly new version of it. So it looks something like that. Who has seen the new version already? Raise your hand. Great. And this new version is a number internally that we called version 5. So this is probably the most significant version upgrade that we have in the product in the past 5 years since the beginning of Google Analytics. So many of you think of Google Analytics primarily in the vertical of website analytics. So let me reemphasize and reestablish your trust in Google Analytics by showing you a few of the customers that use GA on a daily basis. Who recognized the first icon? Remember, it is whitehouse.gov. It's not whitehouse.com. What about the second one? What is that? FBI. Wow, my goodness. This is a government employee or somebody who is interested to do spyware. That is indeed the FBI, along with a list of Fortune 500 companies and large companies that you may recognize. These are companies that use Google Analytics exclusively. Now, the point I want to make here with this slide is many of you have heard about various tracking issues on the web. But if the US government, or if you prefer, if Mr. Obama trusts Google Analytics, shouldn't you trust Google Analytics also? On the rich media side, this is probably less well known. So here's a series of platforms that have native Google Analytics tracking built into it. Many of you develop in AS3, ActionScript 3, or Adobe Air, or Microsoft Silverlight, for the few of you who still do that, Ajax applications, and so on. If you would like to track natively your applications in these platforms, there are various SDKs you can download and do tracking with your development. On the mobile side, so the reason that we are all here is because of Android. But it's also true that we have a native SDK with the iOS platform, for those of you who develop in that area. Perhaps these days, in order for anyone to be hip, you really have to talk about social. And so here is a few of the social measurement companies plus tools that would be useful to you if you are interested in this area. So Twitter.com, who is right here in San Francisco, is one of the largest Google Analytics users. How many of you develop Facebook apps? Oh, really? OK. This must be a Google conference. So for those of you who would like to develop Facebook apps, it turns out that there is an FBML tag natively built into the Facebook platform called Google Analytics. And let me also, as a show of hand, anyone here play Farmville? Or anyone here who dare to raise their hand that they play Farmville? So it turns out that as one of the most popular social casual games on the web, Farmville has been optimizing its experience with the help of Google Analytics. So that's pretty cool. Now, if you, of course, use any of the like WordPress or iGoogle, et cetera, you would also realize that for many of these platforms, there are plugins, particularly for Google Analytics. So the point of this slide is that many people associate Google Analytics with web analytics tracking. And this slide now, if you have never seen this before, really tell a different story. What we are trying to do here in the team is try to build a 360-degree tool for you as a developer, as a marketer, to have that complete view of your visitors as they go through your digital online experience. So Google Analytics has evolved. It has evolved into an analytics platform. Or we are still not there yet, but we are definitely working hard on it. So focusing on this presentation, we are going to talk about Android. And we recently released an update to Android. And these are the two experts who will tell you more about it. But for those who care, there are a few core tracking capabilities that you will be able to get out of this native SDK. Of course, you can track unique users or page views and events. And more recently, you can also track your e-commerce transactions if you do that on your mobile phone. Or if you want to set custom variables. Or if you would like to track market referrals from the Android marketplace. So without exposing my ignorance of some of these, I'm going to pass to the experts who will tell you how these things work. Nick?
Great. Thanks, Phil. Great, guys. So today we have a bunch of demos that we're going to present to you on how you can leverage our Google Analytics SDK for Android. How many people here have used Google Analytics for Android? A couple people? Some people, OK. So for some of you, this might be introductory, but we're going to take you through the whole process of best practices, how to set it up, as well as how to interpret some of the reports that you might not have used previously. So before we get into the demos, I want to set a little stage for people who are new to the product and talk about how you get started. It's really simple. The first step is we offer a SDK you could download from our site. It's a zip file which has a jar. You link the jar to your library. And then you need to set two permissions. You set the internet and the access network state permissions. And once you have that, boom, you've done all the configuration, and you're ready to start coding. Now, on the code side, we also made it really easy. The library provides a Google Analytics Tracker class. And on the onCreate method within your activity, you grab an instance of that class, which is returned as a singleton, and you call start. And you pass it your account ID and the context. And the account ID is common to what Google Analytics, which you normally see in the JavaScript interface.
That code has a memory link. If you use the activity context, the code has a memory link that's in your example. You need to use the application context.
All right. Come talk to us afterwards, and it's fine. What I really want to illustrate with this is a very simple snippet of code, but magically, there's a lot of stuff that happens under the hood. What we do is if you're a first-time visitor to an application, we create a random ID and create a SQLite table and store the ID in the table. Now, if you return to the application, we see if the table exists, and we retrieve the ID, and we can associate that unique ID with the user. Now, this ID is completely random. It's not the device ID. It is not tied to anything personally identifiable. What it allows us to do, though, is track unique users for the content in your application. So how many 7-day active users do you have using your app today around the globe? These are the questions Google Analytics can answer. So before we get into the actual tracking, it's also important to understand how data is sent to Google Analytics. So instead of traditionally, when you make a tracking request, data is sent directly to Analytics. In our SDK, it's a little bit different. We actually store all the data in a queue and then send all the data as a batched request. And this helps us save battery life, as well as allows us to track users when they're offline. So if there's a spotty connection, we can still track them. And then finally, when they resume their connection, we could send all the data to Analytics. And to do that, we can manually do it, calling the dispatch method, or overload the start method with the interval, which is the number of seconds to send all the data. So now what we just talked about was how to get the library and get started. We talked about how to instantiate a tracker method. And we just talked about how to send data to Analytics. So let's get to tracking. Now, as application developers, it's important to understand how users interact with content. So in Android, this means tracking activities or views. Now, in the web, we typically measure viewing of content as web page views. And this page view essentially means that we're tracking the number of loads or the number of times the screen has changed. So in an application, we could use the same concept and track the number of times the screen has changed as well with page view tracking. Now, as a best practice, we usually recommend you use page view tracking when there's a significant amount of content that changes on your screen, and using something differently when you track interactions with the content. And we'll show you that a little bit later. So with that, let's get to the first demo and talk about how to track activities.
Thanks, Nick. Before I show code, I want to tell you that we're going to use the Notepad sample application that you can find in the Android SDK. And let me go through that application for those of you not familiar with it. Here I have the Notepad application. You can simply add notes here. See if I can type. Oops, I can't type. I don't know if many of you have seen Nick at Night. Well, he's pretty funny, I hear, so. And then you can edit notes. Let's see if we can, let's click on this. And you can edit the title. So let's put a exclamation point on the title. Oops, well, that'll work. And then you can delete a note as well. And that's the Notepad application in a nutshell. So what I'm going to do now is add some tracking code to the Notepad application. And here is my project. And you can see that we have several activities that make up the Notepad application. I'll start with the notes list activity, which is the first one that comes up when you launch the application. And let's try this way. And let's go to, I guess we'll start here. I've declared an instance of the tracker object that I want to use to do my tracking. And then here, in my onCreate method, I've instantiated an instance of the tracker and I've started it up. And then here in my onResume, I'm going to go ahead and track the page view. Let's see if I can highlight that for you. I'm using the application or the activities class name for this. So that's for my notes list. I've also, since there are several other activities here, I've decided to create a subclass that they can all extend called tracked activity. And again, tracked activity does exactly the same thing. On create, we start up a tracker, and then on resume, we call track page view. Now, I would run this application, but you wouldn't see a whole lot because all the tracking happens behind the scenes. Fortunately for this latest version of the SDK, which we put out last week, I added a little help in terms of debug support. So what I'm going to do, first off, I'm going to shorten my interval to 1 second so we see things happen quickly. And then I'm going to add a debug flag, turn that on. What this will do is this will put some debug messages in the log so that you can see when the hits are generated and what they look like. And then there's another feature we added. Calling it dry run. And when you set that to true, we won't actually send the hits all the way to Google Analytics. So you don't have to worry about polluting your data space while you're doing testing and debugging. So let me go ahead and do the same thing to the other class. Add this code in there.
Yeah, make sure you save them too.
You want me to save it? Did you say you want me to save this? Okay, it's all saved. Let's run it and see what happens. Well, actually, before I run it, let me show you Logcat. You're probably all familiar with Logcat on the Android ADB. We've tagged all our Google Analytics debugging with the tag Google Analytics Tracker. And if you can see here, I'm going to run the Logcat, and I'm really only interested in the tracking code, and I'm going to suppress all the other debug messages in the system. So we're all set to go. And we run. We go back. And as you can see, we've already gotten our first hit generated as a page view. And you can see that the activity name notes list is there. If you recall, it's the first view. So I'm going to go ahead. You can't see real well what I'm going to do, but I'm going to go ahead and add a note now. And you can see now we got a page view track for the note editor, which is the activity class that you use to enter notes. And then I'm going to go ahead and edit the title. I went back to sorry, forgot about that. Going back and forth. I'm going to go ahead and edit the title, and you'll see the title come up here, the title editor. Oh, I must have pressed a button there. So you can see the page views tracking is happening pretty much as I navigate through the application. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back to Nick so he can show you the reports.
Cool. Thanks, Jim. So my slides aren't showing up for some reason here, but they should be. So when you log back into Google Analytics in version 5, you can go into the content section, the pages report, and you can see the total number of activities and the number of page views that you're tracking for each of these activities. And so the key part, what Jim demonstrated, was that the class name, by passing that to the track view page view method, allows you to associate the classes and activities with the actual content in the reports. Now, remember, we talked a little bit about having a unique user ID that's random associated with every time a user interacts with your content. And what we can do with the custom report in Google Analytics is get a breakdown of the total number of unique users who've actually looked at one of your activities. So to do that, we use what's called a custom report. And in the version 5 interface, you see it in the new custom reports tab. Here, we click a new custom report. We configure it using the page dimensions and the total visitors and page views metrics. Now, what we do is once we click Save, we see a new report here that shows us total visitors as well as the total number of page views. Now, this means during the date range of March 15th all the way through April 14th, this is the total number of unique users who've actually been to these different activities, which is kind of unique. In this case, we see that they're about the same between the notes list and the notes editor activities, but significantly lower in the title editor activity. Now, this means people have never used this part of the application during this time. And as a developer, you might question, well, why isn't this number similar to these other activities? Maybe they're not able to explore and find this activity. Maybe there's some usability issues. So what you're able to do here is use the data to understand where there might be an issue and maybe a place where you can start improving the performance of your activity and using the data to help guide decisions on how to improve your applications. So that's how we track content interactions. The next thing we want to show you is how you track user interactions. And in this case, we use what's called event tracking in Google Analytics. What we're interested in tracking in our application is the number of times people delete a note. And we're also interested to understand from which activities are notes deleted the most. So Jim, let's take a look at a demo and see how to set that up.
Thanks, Nick. OK, so we're going to take our Notepad application again, and I'm going to add some events to track deleting the notes. Now, there's two places you can delete a note. You can delete a note from the notes list, the main view, and then you can delete also from the note editor. So here, I have added code into the notes list. I've highlighted that. Whoops, wrong screen. Sorry. Let's try that again. OK, that's better. So now I've added a track event into the notes list where we process the delete function. And we've added a category of UI interaction. The action is delete. And the label, we're using the activity class name for the label here. And value is not relevant, so I set that to 0. And here's the note editor class. And we do exactly the same thing. UI interaction is our category. Delete is our action. And note editor, this time, is the class. Let's go ahead and run this. move over to our logcat screen. I'm going to go ahead and add a few notes here real quick. So I've added a note R, a note Q, and I'm going to add a note S. Guess I got the alphabet a little wrong there. I'm going to go ahead and delete my first note from the main screen. I've deleted it, and there you can see the event track come through. See if I can highlight the relevant stuff. There's the event category. There's a UI interaction, a delete, and then notes list. So let's go ahead and edit the next note on our list. And I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And there's our second event. And you can see that this one indicates that we use the note editor to delete it. And I have a third one here, so let's go ahead and delete that from the main screen. And again, you can see the event come through and track. That's really all there is to it, and Nick will show you the reports again.
Cool. Thanks, Jim. So once we've collected the data, we can now log again back into the UI and start seeing what's going on. In this case, we look at the content section. Now we go to the events section and the top events report. And here we see all the events that we're starting to track. And when we click this button, boom, we get the number of times a note was deleted overall. And boom, we can click on that. And because we're sending the class name, which associates with activity, we can now differentiate by activity where people are deleting this note the most. Now, we won't stop there. What we really want to do is not only look at the total number of times stuff was deleted, but we also want to understand the total number of unique visitors or unique users who's actually used this feature of the application. And to do that, we can create a custom report. In this case, we use the event action dimension and event label dimensions. And we also here are looking at total visitors and total events. Now, when we click Save, the report shows us for every time people deleted a note, the breakout between the notes list and the notes editor, as well as the total number of unique visitors in the date range who've actually used this feature. Now, in this example, we see that the total number of times people deleted a note from the notes list section was about 4 times greater than the total number of people who deleted a note from the notes editor activity. Now, as an application developer, I'm really curious in why is nobody using this feature that I spent all this time developing my app. Maybe people don't know about the feature. Maybe the feature is hard to use. It's, again, using this data that you can collect from Google Analytics to help understand where people are not really leveraging your application to your full potential. It also might make a sense, if you're trying to understand where to invest time and resources, you might either promote this or try to get rid of the feature at all because people aren't using it. So again, here's a great way on how you can use data to start optimizing your applications. So we just talked about tracking views. We talked about tracking content interactions. The third thing we're going to talk about is tracking user preferences. And in this case, what we want to understand is how behaviors differ by orientation of the device. Are certain features used more when it's in portrait mode or landscape mode? And what this example will show you is how to start using custom variables to track user preferences. Now, before we get into the demo, how many people here know what custom variables are? OK, so we're going to take a step back and do a little conceptual overview of how they apply. So if you think of an application, you have a user who comes to your application and interacts with content. They might return some time, view more pages. They might even come back and do a transaction. In Google Analytics, we call each of these visitor, session, and page levels. Now, a custom variable allows you to describe each of these levels. So for example, you might describe a visitor who's made a purchase and compare them to visitors who haven't made a purchase. You might use a session custom variable to compare users who have logged in versus who haven't logged in. And you might use a page custom variable to compare users who've gone to a particular page that belongs in a category, for example, news versus sports. Now, in the Google Analytics SDK for Android, we make this really easy by providing the setCustomVar method. Now, this method accepts 4 parameters. At any given time, you can send up to 5 custom variables to analytics. So the first parameter is which custom variable you want to set. The second one's the name. The third is the value. And finally, the fourth corresponds to the level. In this case, 1 is visitor, 2 is session, and 3 is page. So now that you all know how custom variables work, Jim, let's see the demo of how to track the orientation.
OK, thanks, Nick. Again, we're taking our Notepad sample application, and we're adding some custom variable support here. So here I'm showing you the code in our tracked activity class. You can see at the beginning, we're setting up our tracker like before. And then we're determining the orientation of the device. And then finally, you can see we're doing our set custom var call. We're using slot 1. The name for this custom variable is screen orientation. And the value is going to be the orientation that we determined above. And we're going to give it a session scope, which is 2. I've done the same for our notes list activity as well. And so let's go ahead and run this. You want to take this?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you want to have?
OK. What is it running?
Not yet. It'll be in a second. OK, I've fired it off. And you can see we've already got our first page view.
So if I turn it here, if I turn it back, we add a note here and turn to editor. Cool. So now we're tracking all the orientation by, yeah. Cool.
You having fun with that?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
OK, that's really all there is for custom variables. Why don't you show us what the reports look like?
So where does custom variable show up in all these requests? Oh, we lost it.
That's back.
OK. Cool. So now that we've collected all this data as custom variables, what's really powerful about custom variables is that we can create what's called an advanced segment and use and segment the number of users who've used one preference versus the other across all our reports. So I'm going to explain what that means. In Google Analytics, we have what's called advanced segments. And in the new interface, you can see it under the advanced segment tag. When you click this button, a little dialog pops up. And you can see a bunch of default segments, as well as you have the ability to create a new advanced segment. So in this case, we'll create a new one. And in the dialog, what we say is we set the custom variable 1, the value 1, to exactly match every time we're setting portrait. Now, what Jim was collecting and sending to analytics was the portrait string when people were in portrait mode and landscape when people were in landscape mode. So here we create a custom variable to match all users who have actually been in the portrait mode. We could similarly come back into analytics and create one that's everybody who's in landscape mode. And we click slave, we end up having 2 custom segments. So again, what's great about this is now these 2 segments of users, we can apply this to any of the reports in analytics and compare the behavior between each of the groups. So let's go back to this report that we looked at earlier. And in this case, we saw that the notes list, the total number of visitors who viewed the notes list and the notes editor activities was effectively the same. But now when we apply these 2 new advanced segments, we see a slightly different story. On the notes list side, we see that people significantly used the portrait orientation more than the landscape orientation. Now that would make sense because in a list, there's you can have a lot more items in a list when it's in portrait mode versus in landscape mode where you have a lot fewer items. On the notes editor side, we see something slightly different. We see the usage is about the same. And if you think of the flow of the app, we see that when you're in portrait mode and you long press to get into edit, the default orientation is still portrait. You actually have to then go to landscape to get the editor view. But when we see the total number of engagement or page views, it's significantly higher for those visitors in landscape mode. And that's probably because users are preferring to use landscape mode while they're editing because the buttons are a little bit wider. So here's a great way on how you can capture data from users and their preferences, apply them back into your reports to see how they're using your application based on different preferences they have that they've set. Cool. So the last demo that we want to show you is a new feature that we just launched last week, which is e-commerce tracking in our SDK. So increasingly, applications are enabling people to buy virtual goods and to conduct e-commerce transactions directly in the app. So with this new update, we allow you to track transactions and items directly in Google Analytics. So before we go into the demo, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the different components and how they all work together. So if you think of a shopping basket, you have one transaction and a bunch of items. In Google Analytics, each of these are different objects. So you have one transaction object and a bunch of different item objects that you can create with your data. And they're all tied together using an order ID. So once you have those objects, you add them to the tracker, calling the add transaction and add item methods. And what this happens is it effectively fills your shopping basket in an e-commerce buffer. And once you have all your items defined, you call track transactions, and then this sends it to the dispatcher, which then queues it up to send it to Google Analytics. So now that we see how all the pieces work together, Jim, let's see how it works.
OK, thanks. So we have, if you've looked at the samples for in-app billing, there's the one called Dungeon, and I've taken that and I've made some modifications to make it a little bit more interesting and to add some tracking for e-commerce. So here's the key method. This is a callback on purchase state change, and this gets called when the transaction that you've requested has been confirmed by the system. And what I've done then is added code to log the transaction in Google Analytics at this point in time. So if you look at the highlighted code near the bottom, you can see that if the purchase has gone through, the purchase state is purchased, we're going to add a transaction to the tracker, and we pass in an order ID, which is passed in to us in this callback method. And then for price, all the items in this demo application are 99 cents. And so we just put 99-cent price in there. And then we add an item. We use the order ID that's passed in so we can tie the transaction back to the item. And then we add in the item ID, which is passed in as part of this callback. And again, every item is 99 cents. And for this application, every transaction is one item purchased. So let's go ahead and run this. I want to make sure that our logging is on. It is. Let's go ahead and run this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip over to the device so you can see this application a little bit. So here's the application. It's got one line item. So you can select a blue sword or a red sword or a potion for purchase. And when you do that, let's try it. You'll get this confirmation screen. We'll go ahead and purchase. And the purchase has come through. So let's flip over to our logcat screen. And as you can see, we have 2 hits have been generated. The first one. Let me highlight it here is the transaction hit. You can see the order ID. It starts that 1-3 on one line and comes across. And then you have our item hit coming next. And you can see it's got the same order ID. You should be able to see that there. And the blue sword is what was purchased. So I'm going to go ahead and purchase a few potions here because I need lots of help.
Keep dying in the game.
Oh, wait. I purchased another blue sword.
You like the blue swords, huh?
Yeah, I got 2 of those now. All right, so let's try a potion now. And there it is. You should be able to see the potion. And I need lots of healing potions, so let me buy a few more here. There it is. And there it is. And that's all there is to it, really. So, Nick, why don't you show us what the reports would look like?
Cool. So once you've collected the data, in the new version 5 interface, you simply go to the conversion section, the e-commerce and product performance, and then at the bottom, we'll show you the total quantity, unique purchases, revenue associated with each of the products. So again, in this case, the blue sword was bought multiple times compared to the red sword. If that's the case with products, you might consider, there's a preference to blue. Maybe we need more blue items in the store. Having the data there allows you to start making these questions and starting to test some ideas. So with that, that's the end of our presentation. It's like the presentation went really short because it's that easy for us for people to do. So we highly recommend you go to our documentation, download the SDK, and then all the code that we showed today is available at Analytics API Samples. If you like the presentation, tweet it using the hashtag Android. And if you have any feedback, let us know. Let us know if we did good or bad. And we'll open it up into Q&A.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In the new SDK, we're working with fragments a lot. Do you have any best practices for working with fragments instead of the activities?
Not at the top of my head, no.
Okay.
So, sorry.
No problem.
Hi, I have a client-server application, and I also use Google Analytics on the server side. Do you have any advice on how I can correlate activity between users' activities on the client and on the server?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now, there's no good solution for that. The key being that you need a primary key between both environments. Right now, there's no way to override a visitor ID, which would be that primary key. So not at this time.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, is there a way to log all of the Google Analytics data and then send it later at like a user connects to Wi-Fi in one big batch request or something?
Yeah, there's two modes of dispatch. What happens is when you actually log the hit in your code, it gets stored locally, and then it will get dispatched either through the automatic dispatch mechanism, which is periodic, or you can do it manually yourself. So if you wanted to wait until you had a Wi-Fi connection, for example, you would write a receiver that would call dispatch whenever a Wi-Fi connection was available. That would be the way to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. Yeah.
Is there now, or are there plans to have functionality for doing this sort of tracking with the NDK?
I'm sorry?
With the native development kit?
The native development, oh, for Android?
Yeah.
I don't think we have any plans right now
Okay.
we can talk about.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Any plans to open source the client code?
Yeah, that's a good question. So currently, we don't have an open protocol for collecting stuff. We do have a bunch of the client libraries, like Phil mentioned. It's something that we'd like to do, but there's a lot of stuff to get to there. So
Because
currently, yeah.
The main reason why my app crashes right now is because I think it uses SQLite in the
Is the table is a persistence? Yeah.
Yeah, and also when it goes off, there's a out of memory exception or something like that, because I send lots of events, and I had to wrap all this code around the analytics to make it asynchronous, because since it uses SQLite, every time I insert something, there's sometimes when the SD card or the phone is slow, the internal memory is low, then it takes like 200 milliseconds to insert.
Oh, yeah.
So I can't really trigger events on create and all this stuff. So otherwise it will slow down a lot the app.
Okay.
Yeah.
So currently, yeah, it's not open source. The code wasn't really designed to be modular and open source, but maybe we could chat afterwards.
Yeah, I'm going to go upstairs to the Android office hours.
Yeah.
Cool. So if you want to talk more there, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Hi there. Questions around white space. I want to track user comments, but the white space really killed me for a couple hours. I guess really you guys log it as a warning, but maybe it should be an exception. Or, and my second question is, do you expect all white space to give me headaches, or is it just the space? Because we're really putting it into page view, and a page view should not have any spaces.
So the page view is supposed to represent, yeah, it's a great piece of feedback. If you use event tracking, it supports white space. Page views don't. Yep.
Hi, we do our own tracking right now, and we'll often alter our server response based on user behavior. Is there any opportunity to query your system for information about a user? I mean, our information.
Sorry. Explain.
Yeah, so we'll have a user, if a user's ever bought something, we'll actually send different messages to them than a user that hasn't. So on our server side, we need to know whether a user falls into a certain category. Can we query from our server, query Google Analytics for information that's stored on our behalf?
You can't get personally identifiable information out of the SDK at all. So
yeah, so from this, so there maybe it's something different. So what we're talking about here is collecting data. So if there's some data in your system that you want to send into GA and associate with all the user behavior, you can do it through the collection side. If you wanted to query for data that's already been processed and then pull it back into your own system to close the loop, we have an export API, which you can then use. So in that case, you usually have some sort of common ID, like a transaction ID or a custom variable you can pass an ID in. And then you can query our export API against that ID and get all the usage data and then put that in your system and then further act on it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned that it's the user ID is stored in SQLite. That's in the applications context, so if somebody does a clear data, it's going to wipe that out and generate a new one the next time they log in.
Yep. That's correct.
Okay.
And every time the app if you uninstall the app, it will also get wiped out.
Okay.
It will retain it though if you upgrade the app without uninstalling.
Right, and then we run our applications across multiple kinds of devices, Android, RIM, etc. Is there any way that we would be able to track the same kinds of events in the other platforms that we are working with?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have support for Android natively and iOS. We just released the debug, dry run, and e-commerce in Android. So we're working on that to get that in iOS as well. For the other devices, we don't have any native application tracking. What we have is mobile snippet, server-side stuff. So if you have mobile, like kind of web experiences, you can track in those devices, even though they don't generally store, they don't have a great persistence mechanism.
Yeah, no, these are entirely apps. So
yeah, okay. So currently we don't have that. Okay. Yeah.
My question is on, so a lot of each view you track, creates HTTP queries. Is there any way, are you guys using any HTTP pipelining so that same connection can be used on all the data? Or every time you send data, you're making a new connections to the servers?
Yeah. So the way that we implemented here is we use HTTP 1.1. So we actually do pipelining over that. So
okay.
the reason why we're batching this stuff is so we can pipeline it. And the reason was because when we first built it, we didn't do it, and then all the battery went away.
Okay.
So then we put it together, and then now it doesn't take up all the battery. So it's a great question.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Another question is there a way I can make it at the, when I know the last activity out of my, application is exited, at that time, can I able to push all the data to the server, stagger them at the last time,
Sure.
I don't want any data transaction in between my application.
Well, right, and that's the manual dispatch I talked about before. You could actually call, I think the method's called dispatch in the tracker.
Okay.
And if you start the tracker and you pass it -1, I think, it will not do any automatic dispatching. It will wait for you to tell it to dispatch.
Okay, so I can call it at the time user really exits.
Right.
Sure.
There's one caveat there. It will only dispatch up to 30 hits at a time. So you might loop through and call it several times, or if you keep track of how many hits you've generated, you'll know if you have to call it more than once to make sure it goes through.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
When doing the automatic updates, do you synchronize with the set inexact timer type things so that you'll piggyback on when Google Push and the other things are waking the device up? Or is there a value you can pass in for aligning with that?
No, right now we just dispatch as frequently as the time interval that you've requested. So if you request 10 seconds, we're going to dispatch more or less every 10 seconds, maybe a little longer.
Okay.
On one of your initial slides, I think you had a bullet about market referrals being something that's integrated into Google Analytics.
Yeah.
Is there a way to get information about how your app is, the detail page within market and then the downloaders? I haven't seen that.
Fantastic feature. We did not demo it today. So for the people who are staying late, we'll tell you a new feature. It's been in there for a while. So what happens is, let's say you have an ad that you're trying to get people to download your application through the Android market. You can add to the link that points to the Android market are referral parameters. With the Android market, when somebody downloads the app, it'll broadcast an intent with all the parameters, which there's one more configuration we didn't talk about, but it's all in our docs that will read that and then associate that campaign with the download as well. So you can definitely use that, and it's actually really helpful.
So a follow-up question on that, is there any way to get, if a user is coming through a search in market as opposed to an advertising-based intent,
Currently,
is there a way to get search parameters?
Yeah, currently, no. You specifically have to tag them.
Google Analytics has lots of various pieces of data like average time on page, things like that. Are those useful at all in this context? They seem random for my app. And is there any plan to add the ability to say when someone left an activity?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the averages might be a little bit misleading because it's kind of a calculated metric. Total time is probably a better metric to look at. And I think it's available through the custom reporting, but just not the standard reports. So I would take a look at that. So in many of the cases, the averages might be a little bit off, but the totals should add up, right? The total time would be how many people, that will always add up.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Cool. All right, cool. If you have more questions, come to office hours.
Thanks a lot, guys.